Okay, well, first off, hi. Thanks for being
Hi.
here, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. I was exposed to COVID, unfortunately.
Oh
So,
no.
no, it's okay. I mean, at this point, it's just COVID, right? At this point,
Yeah, are you feeling okay?
I'm feeling okay. I have had a headache for the last couple of days, so we'll see how that goes. But the last time I had COVID, it was basically just. Oh, let me turn this down. Sorry. The last time I had COVID, it was just a headache and like a really bad sore throat, and I was
Hmm.
just like tired. So I'm hoping that's all it is if I do get it. So, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for being on. Do you want to tell my audience a bit about who you are?
Sure, of course, I would love to. So I am obviously my name is Rachel Paulson. I am an actor, director, writer, acting coach out of Los Angeles. Right now, I'm actually the background is in Houston, so don't be fooled. This is not the color of my my bedroom. Um, it's my fiance's parents' house, but I essentially, started in the industry when I was a kid. I've got family in the industry all over the place, and I just really want to kind of help actors to really, learn more about the industry that I didn't know when I was first either starting out or in each kind of phase of my career. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast in the first place, why I started, coaching is just because I wanted to help actors with things that I didn't know when I was first coming up. And I've been in the industry for like 20 plus years now. I've done every aspect of it. I've kind of done casting, I've done directing, I've done acting, I've done producing, writing, so I have a wealth of information that I want to give. So yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the
Yeah.
podcast and being open to sharing that information with us, my listeners.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
So I guess let's dive into just some of your teaching because I know you've been doing a lot of teaching. You mentioned to me that you do both commercial and scene study. How do you go about, or rather, how should actors go about switching between the two? Because commercial, I always feel can be like such a daunting thing to do because it feels so unnatural to like buy a
Yeah.
Coke, I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I think, it's a great question. I think they are such different worlds. I think that so many actors are like, oh, I'm an actor. So I do commercials, I do plays, I do film and TV. And I think it's so weird because when I teach, I kind of live under this umbrella of like every version of acting is like so much different, right? It's
Hmm.
like being on stage is so much different than being in front of, a camera. And then being, on a commercial is so much different than a TV show, which is so much different than a movie. So I think what I do is kind of help differentiate through different kinds of, techniques that I work in. I think obviously when we're doing film and TV, it's much more, subtle and small and real and honest and truthful. And I think commercials are just there to sell a product. So I think they can be like, a little bit more, kind of outgoing and bubbly and like not necessarily fake, but a little bit more like, hi, how are you? I'm Rachel, instead of like it being, hi, how are you? I'm Rachel. So I kind of try to differentiate between, I use this thing called POV, which is almost like making a choice, but for
Hmm.
commercials. And I kind of break down commercials into this really simple kind of, um, I guess, structure that has really helped actors, which is kind of, what's the problem of the commercial? What's the solution? And what's the like funny part, right? And between
Hmm.
those three things, it kind of helps to make it more like a moment scene instead of it being this kind of, you know, cheesy sort of situation. So I think that's a little bit of what I do, but I do really break them up into like three different things: film, TV, commercial.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And this might seem like an obvious question, but what do you find are the main differences that you're focused on with the actor when they're approaching these different avenues?
Yeah, that's not an obvious question. It's a hard question. I think I think that the differences are, something of what I was touching on a little bit ago is, between with film, I think that film is very subtle, right? And supernatural. It's like unless you're doing a huge action movie or something like that, it's very rare that you are, big and bold in your body language or anything like that, unless it's like a comedy or something like that. It's usually, films are usually like slices of people's lives, right? And they're
Mhm.
usually supposed to feel that way and supposed to feel really real and really structured. Where TV, depending on what kind of TV you're doing, whether it's procedural or, comedy or, multicam or whatever it is, those are all kind of a different world, right? So each one of them, multicams are like, much more slapsticky, and there's like an audience sometimes, and procedurals are very rigid and like this,
Mhm.
and then regular comedies can be a little more like flowy and things like that. And then commercials, I think, are just the hardest thing about commercials, I think I find, is that this one page is supposed to tell you this entire story, right?
Mm.
It's just this like 30-second one page thing. So there is no opportunity to, and there's no need to really build a backstory or a world within this character, because you're looking at the world, right? You're
Mm.
looking at it. So I think that's a big difference in commercials, at least, is that there is no backstory. There is no digging in deep to the character. There is none of that, because what you're looking at is kind of what you get, you know?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think sometimes that trap of like digging very deeply into backstory, particularly for like an audition or something, can I think trap the actor in a certain
Yeah.
way. You feel like you have to show your choices a bit. So I think sometimes even having something light like a commercial, but just focusing on the story aspect is so
Yeah.
key.
Yeah. I think just focusing, and commercials are so simple. And I think that, so many people try. I have so many actors that come into my commercial classes specifically that are like, okay, so I feel like she's going through this, and like that,
Hmm.
and I'm like, no, 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 you're thinking way too much into it. This is a
Yeah.
15-second moment in
Hmm.
someone's life, right? It's not like, think about, 15 seconds. It's like, oh, I pick up my phone and then that 15 seconds is over. That's it,
Hmm.
right? So it's like, I think it helps actors to kind of really simplify acting, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Because they're really simple if you really know kind of how to oh, how
Yeah.
to
She'll be back at some point. This little
she's cute.
cat.
I love. If you know how to really like, compartmentalize commercials into kind of like structure one, structure two, structure three, and I think it makes it really easy, and it simplifies it. And I don't know a ton of actors that like, want to be a commercial actor for the rest of their life, right? Most of
Hmm.
them are kind of like, I want to do this either to step into it or to make money while I'm trying to do other things. You
Yeah.
know, commercials aren't that deep, and I think it's just they're a simple way to kind of get into the industry and um, be on sets and make good money, and
Hmm.
move into other things that you want to do. So I think my one advice with commercials is like, simplify the situation.
I think that's
Yeah.
great. And I
Yeah.
think I love what you touched on there too, because I certainly in the past I felt with commercial auditions, just a complete lack of motivation to do them. Right. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh boy,
It's
okay,
hard.
I'll get this going.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that are just like, show your hands, show this face, show that face. Uh, but I like what you said there. It is a nice way to break into the industry in a lot of ways and to just kind of be on a set and get used to that in kind of a lower pressure environment. Oftentimes, as the actor, we're not feeling like, okay, I gotta give the performance of a lifetime right now.
Right. Like, nobody's winning Academy Awards for commercials, right? It's like they're not, they're not even they're not they're just the only reason that commercials exist is to show a consumer a product and try to get them to relate to that product so they'll go and purchase it. That's the
Mhm.
only thing they're trying to do. They're not trying to win any awards. They're not really trying to tell some crazy story. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're not really trying to like touch anyone. They're really ultimately at the end of the day, and some of them do that. Some of them touch people.
Mhm.
Some of them, make you laugh. Some of them do those things, but ultimately they're not trying to really do that. They're more
Mhm.
trying to sell their product, right? So I think if we can think of that as an actor from like an advertising perspective, it's like it just takes a little pressure off of us to like give these, insanely crazy performances, and like have casting directors watching these performances and being like, oh, they're so talented, where it's like commercials are just like, oh, that's funny, or oh, they're
Yeah.
good. Like
Mhm.
it's not, and I think it takes so much pressure off of people. And I used to hate commercials. I used to hate them because I would be what you just said. Like I would be like, ugh, I have to go show my hands for a stupid commercial. And like, what's the point of this? Right. Like, and then I started getting commercial checks, and I was like, oh, that's the point of this.
Yeah. I can kind of
Yeah.
open up those doors for you to pursue those other things you want, like you do some directing, some filmmaking,
Yeah.
just get new headshots, whatever you might need.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's like, most of the time, and everybody's journey in this industry is obviously different. So I don't think that this is what I'm about to say is for obviously every person.
Hmm.
But a lot of people like they start in commercials, and it's like that's how you take that first leap. Is like, agents are much more, I think, willing to take a chance on someone who's never acted before in commercials than they are theatrically, right?
Hmm.
So I know some of my friends have commercial agents and they aren't even actors. They're like,
Oh wow.
oh, but I make so much money. It's like so easy and just going in for commercial auditions, and they aren't even actors. They're
Yeah.
like musicians or like, you know what I mean? Or like work in social media or something. Like it's just
Hmm.
like I know some people that have agents that aren't even actors, which, I don't recommend necessarily, but when you are an actor, it's like it's a really great stepping stone to like get into other stuff, is like starting like if you can get a commercial agent and then show that agent that you can book, a commercial, then you
Hmm.
can go to an agent and say, look what I did. And then you can maybe go to a manager and say, I have two commercials. Don't you want to rep me? Right.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
I think, it's just, don't discount them, guys. Don't discount them because they're a great way to really, get started and just get experience and make decent money, for a
Yeah.
day's work. Yeah.
That's a great point. I know there's lots of agencies out here in LA that they will only start you with their commercial division.
Yeah.
Unless you already have like some credits, right? You're switching from a theatrical agent, but oftentimes they'll start you out in commercial, and then when you kind of prove that you can book some things, then they'll think about bringing you on theatrically.
Yeah, yeah, and it's because I'm telling you, it's because commercials are just easier, and they're
Hmm.
willing to take that risk because you can be good at commercials and write for commercials and maybe not such a strong actor when it comes to theatrical stuff, right? So it's like they can take a chance and like, nothing's really going to happen to their reputation as an agent if they're sending in people that like aren't these like epically amazing actors yet, right?
Hmm.
Because it isn't as scary for them. Whereas like if it's a theatrical agent, they're like, well, what films have you done? What TV shows have you been on? What, because they don't want to take that risk. They want to make sure that if they put you in the room, you're going to deliver, right?
Hmm.
But with a commercial agent, it's just way less risky for them.
Well, so
Yeah.
moving from commercial to you also teach some like scene study for theatrical, for TV, for film, theater. How do you approach that with actors? Like, let's say they bring in an audition to you. What's something you would do to help them break through?
Yeah, so I think when I work with actors in the theatrical space, I think it's like what I work in is relating things in your real life to what's going on with the character. What I mean by that is
Hmm.
let's say that like your audition is for a 1940s war nurse.
Hmm.
Okay. Um Obviously you and I are never going to relate to that. We're not, nurses. We're not in the 40s.
Hmm.
We're not in the middle of, I mean, we're in the middle of a war, but we aren't personally. Um, wait, thank God.
Yeah.
But so we're not going to really be able to relate to the situation, right? But what we can relate to is the emotions that that character is going through, right? Like I'm sure that character feels lonely and afraid and wants to be helpful, and is feeling those things, and everybody has felt those things before at some point. So what I try to do is relate actors to the emotional situation instead of the actual like situation. That way they can touch on the emotions, because I'm telling you that it doesn't matter what situation you're in. Loneliness is going to look the same for you whether you place me in the 1940s or you place me in 2013 or you place me in
Hmm.
2023, right?
Hmm.
For me, the way that loneliness looks is the way that it looks, right? For you, it may look different than it looks for me,
Hmm.
right? But no matter where you place me, loneliness or sadness or helpfulness or happiness or excitedness is going to look the same on me. So that's kind of what I try to do to help them break through, is relate kind of things that they've been through emotionally to whatever the character is going through for their audition.
That's wonderful because I do
Yeah.
feel there's a pressure on actors too to always feel like they have to create this expansive character that's so vastly different. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're saying, actually, no, we want to connect like deeper to ourselves than
Yeah.
bring that to the character.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I worked in casting, and I talk about this all the time, and I want to talk about these sessions later, but in these
Hmm.
sessions, the reason is because we talk about essence all the time, right?
Hmm.
Like the essence of a person. And when I was working in casting, like this was such a big thing. It's like I don't want, you, for example, I don't want you, Justin, to come in and pretend to be somebody else. I want to see like a version of you,
Hmm.
right? I want to see Justin as so and so, right? Like, what
Hmm.
would you actually do if these situations were presenting themselves to you, right?
Hmm.
Like, or these emotions were presenting themselves to you, or you were feeling this way. I don't want you to pretend like you're this person. I want you to touch on the things that are inside of you and relate to that person and those feelings that way. And I think like having this essence about you just means like the roles that you can play and like the emotions that you can tap into, right? It's
Hmm.
like, I want you to be you.
I love that. That's a great
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. Thank you.
As a casting director, when you're casting projects, what's something you notice that actors come in and do that maybe sets them back a little bit?
So such a great question. Thank you for asking that question because
Good.
I always want to tell actors this. So take risks. Don't be afraid to take that. Like I feel like actors always do this. Like they'll look at a script and they'll go, oh, I want to do this, but I don't think that's right. So I'll do this other thing.
Mm,
Right. And whenever I was casting, I did commercials, actually, commercial casting. And I would always see, I mean, we would see, 70 to 200 people for one role, you
oof.
know, a lot of times. And this was back in like the heyday of commercials, like,
Hmm.
like 10 years ago or so. Right.
Hmm.
And people would come in and those 70 people they'd all do the exact same thing because they
Hmm.
would do how it was written on the page or like what they thought they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then we would get these one or two actors that would come in and it would just be like off the wall. And those would be the people that were getting callbacks
Mm,
because they weren't afraid to take this risk or afraid to do this thing that they like wanted to really do, but
hmm.
didn't think it was like the right thing. And like whatever I say, whenever I talk about commercials with people too, it's like, and I mean theatrical as well, it's the same thing. But
Hmm.
specifically commercials I know so much about just because I was, in that world for 10 years.
Hmm.
Just like we have no idea what they actually want,
Hmm.
right? Like there's no way for us to know as actors what they're looking for. I mean, there's a type or a spec, and you've been called in because you're right for that type or that spec based on a headshot or a reel, right?
Hmm.
But when you get into the room and you do the performance, like there is no right way, right? There is no right way or wrong way to do your audition.
Hmm.
So I want you to interpret it how I want a piece of you. I want to see you, like what I was saying before. And like, if it's wrong, then it's wrong. You shouldn't book the role,
Hmm.
right? Because that's what your choice and your feeling around it was, right? And I think that like I would rather see an actor like that than an actor come in and try to do what the right choice is or the right thing is, because ultimately there's no way that you're ever going to know what that is. The director's not going to call you and say, "Hey, Rachel, how are you? So this is exactly what's right for the commercial or audition, and
Hmm.
this is what's wrong." No one, you're never going to know. And if you
Yeah.
don't book it, you're never going to know why,
Hmm.
right? So my thing is like, go have fun with it. Do what you feel, and don't
Hmm.
worry about what the right thing is or the wrong thing is. Just do how you would interpret it.
I love that. And I love
Yeah,
that, even you mentioned that, yeah, maybe you take this risk and it just isn't right for this role. But what I would imagine is when that happened for you, when you saw an actor do that, even if they did not get cast, that was someone that you remembered, that you were like, ooh, I might
one
call
hundred
them in for
percent.
other stuff because, yeah.
Yes, 100%. And I will tell you that I know from experience that casting directors have folders on their computers that are called "good for something," and they
Mm,
have actors' headshots in there or auditions that they've come in and done. And just because you're not right for something doesn't mean that you won't be right for something else in the future. And they
mhm,
will they will remember you. And ultimately, for me, it's like I would rather have them remember me and
mhm.
bring me in for something else than like book one thing because I did exactly what I was supposed to do and then
Mhm.
never be memorable.
That's great. I remember I had a
Yeah,
teacher once who said, our job when we go into these auditions is to book the room, not book the role.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
I
that.
agree. Yeah.
Uh, so also, just because we are in this lovely time, it's been a couple of days now since the strike ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
How
was
are you?
genuine. That was like a squeal.
Yeah, I know. How do you feel about everything? What do you think are some things that actors could maybe start focusing on now that the strike is over and the light's green?
Yes, I'm just, I think I'm also, I think it needed to happen for sure. Like what
Hmm.
happened, obviously, and I think all actors are on that page. But I am just so grateful that it's done. I mean, we didn't work for like it was like 7 months, so I'm happy that this is starting. I think hopefully a lot of actors during this time took this time to take as many classes as they could and really like get prepped for now. The light being green, I think it's going to be super chaotic for the next couple of weeks slash months. At first I thought that nothing would ramp up until January, but I've now heard that, I mean, things are already, I know some crew members that were literally like everybody I know has already been called into work.
Oh
So
wow.
they're, I think, working through the holidays, only taking off a couple days for Thanksgiving, only taking a couple days off for Christmas. I think it's going to be really crazy. So I think just couple of things: be patient with your reps, let them kind of settle into what the, like forecast is going to be and what the climate will be. They don't know. We don't know. Nobody really
Mm-hmm.
knows yet, right? If you're not represented and you were kind of, because I have a lot of students, I help with getting them repped. So, if you're out there and you're not represented yet and you were kind of waiting for the strike to be done to kind of, send out your materials, again, I would say give it, take a beat, give it a couple of weeks and just let people kind of settle into what this is going to look like. I know that
Mm-hmm.
people are going to start really working. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities on the horizon. But just like, take a breath and like let everyone settle in for a little while. I know we're chomping at the bit to get out there, but I think, I think they'll really respect that if you allow
Mm-hmm.
them to just do their job and kind of take a second. And I think, for actors that aren't repped, I would also like start getting on the sites and like self-submitting, because I think there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a lot more stuff now, you know,
Mm.
um, coming through, and like just stay up on like the SAG news and like see, kind of see what's going on and kind of follow that. I think that's really important too, because you want to be informed and versed on, the new contracts and kind of what's happening and all of that stuff. So
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I'd love to talk about the RR sessions.
Oh, yay, Justin. I want to talk about this too.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So these are like, it's been a really crazy ride. Honestly, my teaching, I'll just start kind of here.
Okay.
In the pandemic, I was freaking out. I was kind of like, I don't know what to do. Everything's
Mm.
shutting down. I was like, rich people homeless. I wasn't really homeless. I was, kind of like, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose my apartment,
Mm.
things like that. And so I had done some in-person workshops previous to the pandemic, and I just had this idea one day where I was like, I'm going to start a whole Zoom company of coaching between commercials and theatrical stuff and all of those things. And from
Mm.
that, I kind of built this thing called the RR sessions, R sessions, I guess, with a really good friend of mine, Rob Alisea, who is a great director, amazing actor, producer.
Mm.
Um, and essentially, what it is it's kind of they're basically industry professional workshops. Okay. So for a price per month, kind of like a gym membership, you pay for this, this amount per month, and they are so affordable. And each month there are two workshops with a different industry professional each class, meaning it's producers, directors, casting directors, managers, agents, other coaches, stuff like that. And it just gives the opportunity for, people to come in and get in front of other people and just listen to
Mm.
kind of their view on, the industry and their take on stuff. And, obviously it's not guaranteed, but the, casting director workshops work.
Mm.
People meet you, you see them, they then call you in at a later date.
Mm.
We've had, some people get represented. We've had some people get called in. I think one of the main things for me in my career that has been so helpful is the connections that I've made throughout my
Mm.
life. And, I've spent 20 years trying to make connections. And I think
Mm.
that's something that I want to be able to give people. And I think this is a way of me handing you connections that you can then, hopefully keep up with in the future. Um, they are, it's like $50 a month, and you get two workshops, you get a website on our page, and you get these support sessions that we're doing every bi-weekly, where you get to kind of come in and just ask Rob and myself questions,
Mm.
just about anything in the industry, maybe contracts that you have, or agents questions, or, I was on set and this happened, what should I do? Or, something along that. And I think we're really creating this like amazing community of people. And it's just been really fulfilling, honestly, to, I've had people reach out and say, this is such an amazing platform and such a great community. And, I've learned so much from everybody. Um, and so it's just been really nice. Ultimately, making money is a great thing. But I really just want, like I was saying before, I really want to just give people what I wasn't able to have. And I think people are
Mm.
so gatekeepy when they get to a certain place in their career. And
Yeah.
it's not that I don't understand it, but I think it's like I want to help, where I can within reason, and,
Mm.
you know, give people opportunities um to keep those doors open and eventually go into them themselves.
I think
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I actually was just working with a headshot client the other day who's an older actor, and I was mentioning like, oh, I'm looking for an agent right now, and he instantly was like, give me your number, I'll hook you up with my agent, we'll see if we can get you a meeting. And I was kind of just taken aback because I had just met this man. And
Yeah,
he said something along the lines of, once you start getting to a place, it's your job to then help the people that are
I
coming up.
agree. I agree. I agree. And obviously within reason, I think it's like if
Hmm.
you have, I mean, Justin, you're insanely talented. So, I
Thank
think
you.
that, and you're very kind and a great person. And I think people probably, you
Thank you.
know,
I'll Venmo you after for that. Thank you.
oh, yeah, Venmo me after this,
Yeah.
$100 per comment.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I think that, when you're someone like you, I think that it's easy to say that. I think obviously I'm not going to give my contacts to everybody. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? But I think it
Hmm.
is your responsibility to help, because if I wouldn't be where I was if some people hadn't helped me.
Hmm.
I think you can't do everything by yourself. Isn't that what we're here for? It's like a community to help each other, right? So I love that happened. I hope you get a meeting with that person.
Yeah, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. Either way, it was just such a lovely connection. And I think
Yeah.
that that's right. Like there's obviously different levels of help, but some of it is just that information that I think at times this industry can seem like such a mystery to try and crack into. So when we have people like you that are willing to kind of open the gates for people and these sessions, I mean, that sounds like a wonderful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And even it's like, it can be so daunting. I have a student that like her parents paid like $6,000 to do like, we'll promise we'll get you on Disney type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's so many scams out there. And I was like, you come to me before you do anything from now
Mm-hmm.
on, you come to me and I will tell you if it's legit, right? Like and I just feel so bad. There's so many people that like have had things like that happen to them, or they'll
Mm-hmm.
have like bad headshots taken, and then they go to their agent and their agent's like, you have to retake these, and then it's like they're spending double the amount of money, and it's like, just you need someone there to kind of guide you, and I
Yeah,
think and if you don't have representation, who does that for you? you know
absolutely.
yeah.
So is that something like those kind of questions or things that they can ask in your community at those
Yeah.
biweekly meetings?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's really open. Sometimes it's just been a conversation about the industry because
Mm-hmm.
no one's had questions, and we've just kind of started a, open conversation about, we talked a lot about the strike a few
Mm-hmm.
times. Other times every single person has had a question, and it's been amazing. And it's been, we had a guy come in that said that he, had this experience happen where he was booked on a role and then unbooked and then booked again. And he was just asking if that's like a normal occurrence. So we had like
Mm-hmm.
a, long conversation about that. But it's just really open. It's their time. So, whatever they kind of want or need in that time. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, you actually had
Yeah.
a friend of mine on your on one
I
of the
did.
interview sections. Yeah, Sonia O'Hara,
Yes.
brilliant
Yes.
director,
Oh,
writer, actress, oh, producer. She does everything.
brilliant. So brilliant. And so
Yeah,
just also such a lovely human.
she's great.
Just such a lovely human. And I've learned, I honestly personally have learned so much from Sonia. So it was really nice to have everyone else learn the things that I have learned from her. And it's just like when she speaks, she has so much passion and so much advice about this industry.
Mm.
And she's just such an advocate of people. So I really enjoyed her, and everyone else did. I got like 4 or 5 emails about Sonia. So
That's great.
yeah.
So I think I only have one more question, which is just, you know, you mentioned how you really want to help give back to people that maybe are in a similar position that you were in when you were starting out. What do you think are some key bits of advice or wisdom that you would share with actors that are just beginning their journey into the industry?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing, and it's going to be, I'm an OBS type of person. Not sugarcoating never helped anybody. I'm not going to be
Hmm.
mean, but like this industry is hard, right? It's
Hmm.
really hard. So I think if you're just starting out, like two things, I think number one, just like don't stop, right? Like just keep going. It's going to knock you down, but you've got to just get back up and know that eventually, if you keep going and you love it, like something will happen, right?
Hmm.
I think secondly, like find someone you can trust, whether it doesn't have to be me, but whether that's an acting coach or a school that you love, or, even a friend that's, you deem to be a little higher in their career or whatnot, a mentor of some sort, and just make sure there's someone you can go to so that you don't get, scammed, or people don't, use you, things like that. And then,
Hmm.
I think also like if you're just starting out and you have headshots and you're at that place, like self-submission is so important when you don't have representation, because the amount of work that you can get from, I still sometimes self-submit. If it's like a good
Hmm.
role, like I'm gonna do it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like self-submission is such a big part of like just starting out, because if you can get that stuff on your resume, then like you're going to be that much more appealing to an agent when you go in, right? And you'll get
Mm,
experience on set, and you'll get to, meet people. Trying to think what else. Do extra work if you can. I think that's a great way to, get on set and be around people and see what it's
mm.
like. And I think also just like hold on tight. You know what I mean? Because it's a crazy industry, and there's beautiful parts of it, and there's hard parts of it, and there's filling parts of it. And, and I think if you just, hold on and really love it, like eventually, you will be fulfilled in this industry. So yeah.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
I thought that was my last question, but I thought of another one,
Okay, great. Give it
which
to
is
me.
just because you also have such experience as a director as well, and I'm just wondering how, I guess, one, how that has parlayed into your acting and to your casting as well. How do they all kind of intermingle together? And then two, what's just something from a director's point of view that you notice with a lot of actors that you have a chance now to maybe talk to them about?
Yeah, that's interesting. I just like kind of fell into directing really, and now I'm like obsessed with it, which is cool. Um, but I think, they all kind of live together because they all are so different, right?
Hmm.
And it's weird because this industry is such an umbrella of things, which is why I love it so much. It's like you can do 50,000 things involving this industry, right? It's like I work in social media. I do a lot of like influencer stuff. I, coach people. I direct, I write, I act.
Hmm.
It's like there's so many facets of it that you can do, but it's like you have to learn how to do them all in a separate space, right?
Hmm.
So I think really just like, I think if you're interested in any of it, just get out there and do it. Like don't be afraid, right?
Hmm.
Don't be afraid to say, I remember when I went to direct my first short, it was like I was so scared. I was like, I don't know
Hmm.
what I'm doing. What if I mess it up? And like, so what? What if you do? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? What if you do mess it up? It's okay. It's just short, right?
Hmm.
It's just a film. No one's gonna die if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
make a couple mistakes, right? So I think like just get out there and like don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to kind of, you know, um get out there and really do it. And I think like the way they live together is really like you have to kind of pick and choose what you want to do in each avenue. Like, if it's, the way that I direct things is way different than the way that I look at acting things, right? Like if I'm going to act in something, it doesn't have to be exactly speaking to me as much as it does if I'm going to direct it, right? If I'm going to tell
Hmm.
the story versus playing the character, it's
Hmm.
such a different world. And I think the passion has to be so much different in both of those, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then writing is so scary because it's like your baby, and you're putting it out there like, here's my story. Like that's
Yeah.
the scariest one for me, I think. And I think something that, I see in actors a lot is just, and I know I've said this before, and I almost feels like I'm answering the same question, so I'm sorry if it feels that way, but um just I never want actors to be afraid. I would rather see you fuck up and make a fool of yourself
Hmm.
than be this tight wound thing that's like in this little that I can't pull anything out of, right? And
Hmm.
I always say to people when you're acting and I'm directing them, it's way easier to pull back than it
Hmm.
is to pull out, right? So
Yeah.
take that leap, make that jump, and I can always bring you back. But it's if you're here and you're like, I'm like super safe right here, and it's like, this is great. It's really hard to pull anything out of that, right? So
Absolutely.
I always say just like go for that leap, make that jump as an actor. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, Rachel, it's been a delight to have you and to have this conversation.
Same, Justin. You're so lovely to talk to. I'm gonna have to FaceTime you like every day.
Yeah, this will be nice. Why don't you share where they might be able to follow you, where they can learn more about the R&R sessions?
Sure, sure. That's a tongue twister. It's an R&R session.
Yeah,
Um, it is. It's a tongue
R
twister.
squared, R squared.
R squared. That's good. We should change that. So on Instagram, I am at RU Paulson, and then the R&R sessions is just www.rrsessions.com. If that's too much to remember, you can always DM me on Instagram or email me at rachelpaulson@me.com, and I can go over all that stuff with you there. Yeah, I also have a website, rachelpaulson.com. That's going to be all the information's on there as well. So yeah.
Great. And we'll also share all those links in the podcast info, and
Cool.
probably going to put this on YouTube too. So in the YouTube little description box.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rachel, thank you again for being on the podcast. And everyone, have a good day.
Thank you, Justin. Bye, everyone.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. If If you want to see more great acting related content, you can head over to the Instagram and TikTok at the Acting Notes. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more great videos coming out soon. I'm Justin Powell. Have a great day. Peace.